Hi, everyone. I'm Gary Summers, and welcome to the audio edition of Mind, Body, Soul. I have a very interesting guest today, Alison Butler, and she's going to. The title that what we're going to talk about is talking about mental health and well-being in a way everyone can understand. Welcome, Alison Butler.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Alison, I think the title is very appropriate. Because when you see a physical ailment, someone with a broken arm or a broken leg, you can easily identify it. But when people go around with mental health issues, there's a stigma because people just can't seem to be able to touch it or see it. So tell us about what you do and about what listeners can expect to hear today.
Okay, great. I would love to. And yeah, I think that's absolutely true. It's hard to understand something when we don't experience it ourselves,
Mhm.
especially when it's not so visible. So, my journey actually started from my own mental health experiences. And about 6 years ago, I started to feel not like myself. I guess that's the best way I can describe it. I was in my mid 30s. I was working in my career. I had two young, very young children at the time. They're a bit bigger now. But I was kind of I was doing all the things, and that was my normal. But I started to not feel well. I was having sort of physical symptoms, and I didn't feel good. That's the best way I can describe it to other people. And I knew that that wasn't my version of normal. And people were saying to me, Allison, you're doing too much, you're taking on too much, you're just stressed, you're just overwhelmed, you just need to take a break. And while those things they may very well have been true.
Sure.
Anyone who knows me, knows that I'm very involved. I'm a very high performer, high achiever. That's just kind of who I am. That is my normal. And so I just knew that it didn't feel right, and I went looking for answers. And I went through kind of a journey there, but eventually I was diagnosed with generalized depression and anxiety. And I can honestly say I speak very openly about my own experiences, but I can say with absolute certainty that I did not see that coming. And the symptoms, I guess, or the signs that I was experiencing, it didn't really line up with what my perception of what mental health looked like at that time. So it's like the thought never even occurred to me that that's what I might have been going through. And so I really embraced that diagnosis. I will often say to people that it is the best thing that ever happened to me. People say, well, how could you say that? That, being diagnosed with depression was the best thing that ever happened to you. But it was a real wake up call for me. It kind of changed. I changed how I was doing things. I changed how I was approaching my own mental health and well-being. And I really started to focus on solutions. What can I do to support myself? And so from there, I actually completely changed my career. I went on to train as a mental health first aid facilitator. So I now teach that program full time. And I also use my background in business and human resources and employment relations, plus my own experiences, to talk to people about stress management, preventing burnout, and just understanding mental health and well being in a different way, because it doesn't always look the way that we expect it to look, or the way that we see in the media. That is some people's experience, but it's not everyone's experience. And I just wanted to put a different face to that, a different lens to that, and show people that, no two people have the same experience with their mental health.
Alison, you brought up a really good point. And when I talk to people, um, I always say to use your feelings as your emotional guidance system. If you don't feel right, then there's something wrong. You're not in balance. And good for you. You use that a diagnosis basically as a gift to change your life, because so many people just accept their feelings and just don't bother to act on them. I don't know what the reason is. Maybe they just feel that that's what that's what life has thrown them, and they figure that's what they have to live with for the rest of their life. So good for you that you were able to act on your feelings. And anybody who's listening to this interview, if you don't feel as though you are in balance in life, then do something about those feelings. Alison, what inspires you to want to help people to live their best lives and protect their mental health?
Well, I really think that, my own experience was the real catalyst there. But then as I sort of explored things for myself, and like you said, I was the one who knew, right? The only person that can ever probably really know how we're feeling is us, right?
Right,
It's
right.
ourselves. And so I really wanted to encourage people that, this can look differently. And I will absolutely 100% agree that, everyone, if they're struggling with mental health challenges or even just going through a hard time, that looks different for everyone. And my experience is not the same as everyone's. But as I started to focus on my own well being, doing things, exploring, because I didn't know what the solutions would be for me. And I've had to explore that over the last 6 or 7 years. But I started to recognize for myself, oh, you know what? I'm actually just, when I was in that sort of peak state before I had a diagnosis, it's like I was just going through the motions of my life, right? I didn't feel like I was really living. I was getting up and I was going to work and I was looking after my kids, but I wasn't good. And so I was really inspired that, okay, with certain solutions, maybe I can improve how I feel by 5%. 10%. Maybe another solution or strategy that I might put into place for my wellness might help me improve 5%, 10%. And, I suddenly became what I feel like is a much better version of myself. And so then I saw that for myself and I thought, this is possible for other people too. Right. And so a huge part of what I do is really that inspiration, helping people see, okay, we can take better care of ourselves. We can figure out, what might help our mental health, our physical health. It's all interconnected. How can I support my well being so that I can feel like a better version of myself? And at the end of the day, a lot of what I do it really comes down to that.
Alison, you brought up a good point, and when we look at how do you define normal? I mean, normal is different for everybody, right? But I guess in some of the readings that I read, and so normal. When you look at what some social psychologists tell us and psychotherapists, is normal allows you to pursue healthy goals and objectives. Abnormal prevents you from pursuing healthy goals and objectives. So if you feel stuck, if you feel as though you're not fulfilling your life in the way that you would like to fulfill it, well, that's not that's not the way life was intended to be for you. So, Alison, I'm really curious about mental health first aid program that you teach. Can you explain it, and why is it so important?
Absolutely. I actually explored it, and there's a variety of training programs out there that can help teach sort of the general public more about mental health and mental well-being. This was the one that sort of resonated with me and that I chose to pursue in my facilitator training. So, mental health first aid is a certification or a certificate training program through the Mental Health Commission of Canada. Um, and it really teaches what I feel are some of the very key skills peer-to-peer support in supporting each other with our mental health and well-being. So some of the key takeaways from the training program that we facilitate are, how do I recognize that someone in my life, whether it be a coworker, a family member, a friend, community member, etc., how do I recognize the signs that maybe they're struggling or maybe they're not the best version of themselves right now? And then how do I have a conversation with them about how they're doing? And that's the piece that really resonated with me for the mental health first aid program, is that I think a lot of us still, because of stigma and because of lots of reasons, we're nervous about having conversations with each other about our mental health. Or we're afraid, how might someone respond to us if I bring this up? And so, a really key part of the training program is, how do we have this conversation, right down to the really specific language that we use, how we approach someone, how do we bring it up? How do we become a better listener? Seems really simple, but for a lot of us, our listening skills could potentially use a bit of improvement. And then, how do I encourage them to potentially seek supports that might help them? So that's a really key piece of the training program, is how do I have that conversation? So it's a really practical skill. And then another piece of the training is, how do I support someone who may be in crisis? And that's a really important piece as well. So for me, it's almost like laying the groundwork for our communities in how do we have conversations about mental health, and then how do we appropriately support one another in sort of that peer-to-peer role. So I really love the training program. I think it's an excellent foundation for anyone who's interested in, being able to support each other. So I will often, maybe a little bit joke, because I'm a bit biased and I teach the training program,
Sure.
but I'll
Yeah.
often say that, everyone needs to take, if you are a person who interacts with other people, then this is a training program for you, because we learn how to better support each other.
I think the 2 points that you brought up is to have that conversation, and most people shy away. Yes, certainly because of the stigma of mental health, but secondly, they don't know how to start.
Hmm. Hmm.
It's like saying to someone, just relax. If they've never ever been able to relax their entire life, you can't just say relax and you're going to get that person to relax. You have to teach them how to relax.
Absolutely.
The other point that you brought up was really good, is that most people don't know how to listen. And Stephen
Hmm.
Covey, if you read Stephen Covey's book, Seven Habits of Highly Effective People, one of the things he says, most people listen to respond
Yes.
instead of listening to understand. And that's, I
Yes.
think, the key point is, what some people's definition of listening is what they're doing while they're waiting to speak. So they're more interested in their own agenda than to try and get at the at the root cause of what could be causing somebody's problem. Alison, what do you wish people knew about mental health?
Oh, that's such a great question. And just to your point about listening as well, is that, a lot of us don't realize that it's a skill that we haven't really been taught, listening, and it's like something that takes practice out there in the world. And so I might even say that to start off this, what do I wish people knew,
Yeah.
is that this is not something that we just magically know overnight. It's a lot of the pieces around mental health is to increase our understanding and then continue to learn and practice skills. So I will say that. But I think the other really big thing that I wish people knew about mental health, or that I really want to continue talking about and is part of almost everything I think that I do, is that we all have a brain, right? So we all have mental health. For some of us, our mental health is in a really good place. For some of us, at certain times in our lives, maybe our mental health is in not such a great place. But I want people to recognize that we can all be impacted at any point in time in our lives, and also that because each of our brains is different, even if we're experiencing mental health challenges, it doesn't always look the same. So, my experience with depression is not the same as someone else's experience with depression. Some people have milder symptoms, some people have more severe symptoms. And I think it's really easy to just kind of lump mental health into this one big category, but it's not. It's unique to the individual. And we really have to be able to be open about having conversations so that we can understand more about what people's experiences are, and then how maybe we can best support them. It's very unique to the individual.
Alison, that's a really good point. We all we all go through life, and we have experiences, and depending on if that experience is good or bad, you draw a conclusion from that experience, and then your beliefs become formed, and then you develop these filters that you look and you see through life through your perception based on the conclusion that you
Hmm.
brought because somebody said, you dropped something on the floor, you must be really clumsy. Therefore, you own that word. And so that, everybody has filters. Everybody does. Some are a little
Yes.
darker than others, like you said, but everybody has developed perceptions, and they've drawn conclusions from those perceptions as to, and it affects everybody's mental health. Everybody's.
Yes.
Nobody is walking around as a perfect person who says the perfect thing all the time and says the right thing all the time and always has the right has the right answers. How
Exactly.
how can we get better at looking after our mental well-being in our busy lives? Because we've just come through a terrible pandemic. We've been shut off from one of the biggest aspects of our life, and that's social interaction. We kind of get shut off from that, and sometimes we're asked to do more with less. There's so many things coming at us. So, um, how can we get better at looking after our mental health?
Okay, that's a great question. And I want to sort of preface this by saying I'm kind of talking about for the general population, how do we support our brains and our mental well-being? If you're if you're someone who's really struggling, you may need additional professional supports. But
Absolutely.
for this question, yeah, for this question, I just want to kind of talk about, you know, all of us out there and how we can better look after ourselves. So I have a lot I could say here. Um, One of the things that I'm really passionate about talking about and speaking about is just sort of this concept of self-care, or how we look after ourselves. And I have a busy life, although I don't tend to love the word busy. Um, but we all have a lot going on, whatever that looks like for you. For some people it's their work, it's their family, it's caring for children, it's caring for aging parents. Everyone has something, right?
We'll call
And
you,
I think,
will Alison, we'll call your life a very fulfilling life.
yes, there we go. I often will try to say that. I have a lot going on.
Yeah,
It's a very full day today.
right.
Yes. So I think one of the things is that so many of us are actually not very good at looking after ourselves. And what a lot of us do is that we prioritize everything else in our life before ourselves. And I meet people and I talk to people and they're like, no, I don't have time for that, right? I have all these other things going on. And I recognize a lot of people have a lot going on in their very full lives. However, a big thing that I talk about is this concept of increasing yourself, or putting yourself higher on your own priority list. Because when we are in a good place, mentally, physically, whatever that looks like for us, we are better able to give of ourselves to others. And we actually talk about that in mental health first aid as well, a little bit. But I really like to talk about it because so many of us are not good at that, including me. This is something that I have to practice for myself on a regular basis. It's prioritizing myself my wellness needs and making time for that in my day, in our days, because otherwise everything else just takes over. Someone is always going to need something. There is always more work. And we have to look after our own mental health. I was actually just thinking about this for myself the other day. In the last couple of years, I've changed my career. I've changed a lot of the things that I do. So I'm self-employed now, and I have a lot more flexibility in my schedule. But I was just thinking to myself, I found myself in a situation that previously probably would have it felt like a lot of pressure, or that I would have had a stress response in that situation in a past version of myself. And I kind of stood there and reflected, and I thought, wow, I'm so calm right now. This is great. And I recognize that that's because of all the work that I do on supporting myself and supporting my mental well-being. So it kind of has this um oh, I've lost the word in my train of thought, but it sort of has this outward ripple effect in our day, right? We look after ourselves, and then other situations we become less stressed, we're better able to look after others, and we improve our own well-being in the process. So I just think it's really important to prioritize whatever it is that we're interested in, whether that be leisure time, hobbies, the food that we're eating, movement, all of those things, to find something and time in your day that improves how you feel.
Yeah, I think
And then that ripple effect will go
yeah,
outwards.
I think sometimes it has a lot to do with the greatest human fear, and that's rejection. So we
Mm.
tend to want to look after other people because we're afraid of what they may think if we say no.
Mm.
Alison, great conversation. I always ask the wellness experts that I have on if they can give our listeners some advice that they can use now to help them deal with any kind of adversity going on in their lives. So take it away.
Oh, okay. All right. So again, I could probably talk all day, but we'll keep it short. We'll keep it short. So one thing that I just want you to know is that if you are struggling, if you feel like you're struggling, as we've spoken about throughout the interview, um, it might be a mental health challenge. Maybe it could be something else going on, right? But I want people to recognize that this is so common. Know that you're not alone, and that there are supports out there that could help you feel like a better version of yourself. Sometimes they're self-directed, sometimes we need to seek out additional professional supports. But if we can be brave and put ourselves out there and start looking for solutions and asking for answers, right? My line wasn't directly straight to a mental health diagnosis. it
Yeah,
was it was
sure.
a journey for sure, right?
Sure. Yeah,
But
absolutely.
I was willing to put myself out there and ask questions and raise my hand and say, I don't feel okay, so there's something going on here. And I had to, go jump through a few hoops there. Some people have to jump through a lot of hoops. So just know that it's extremely common. You're not alone. And that everyone experiences challenges differently. And so there's a different solution. What works for me may not be what works for you, but that there's solutions out there, and that you can improve how you're feeling if you're not feeling so great right now. And so I think that's what I would like to leave people with.
And I think to end off, everybody, I'd like all of our listeners to understand one simple life law, and that is happiness is a birthright.
Mm.
You don't have to wait for it. You can achieve happiness just by dealing with some of the things that may be going on in your life. Alison, thank you very much. As always, I feel like I get every time I interview a wellness professional, I get some therapy. So I'm
That's
becoming
great. Thank you.
I'm becoming the best version of myself. Anyway, Alison, thank you very much for taking the time out of our busy day. And that's it for this week, everyone. I'll be back next week with another interesting guest. Bye bye for now.